All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Spinelli. I'm a managing director with Protiviti and will be the moderator for this session today. Today, we're here to talk about the partnership between finance and technology. And as many of you know in your roles, that partnership and collaboration between an organization's finance and technology function is one that's very critical for both internal initiatives as well as product-related, customer-facing, revenue-generating things as well. Now, whether or not your organization has a formally named Chief Technology Officer or not, it's likely that you're having discussions with your product and technology colleagues about things like allocating resources, funding and managing data security, managing analytics, cloud-based applications, AI, and many, many more things. So our panelists today are very versed in all of these topics, particularly navigating that evolving partnership with the technology organization. And they're going to share with us their frontline experiences in this evolving partnership. So just a reminder, everybody's full bios is in the program guide for today, but I would like each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And in their introduction, they'll tell you the company that they represent, as well as what the Chief Technology Officer role is in their company, if there is one, or if there's someone else in technology as a peer that they interface with regularly. So let's go ahead and start with David.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Mann. I'm the CFO for a company called Sponsor United. Sponsor United is a private equity-backed SaaS and data-oriented company. We keep track of all corporate sponsorships in the sports and entertainment space. All that data is all done behind the scenes. There's all these deals, and we provide transparency in the industry. And that data is really valuable for the sellers of the data, which are the professional sports teams and entertainment venues, and it's really valuable for the people who are spending a lot of money, like all the consumer packaged good companies. Our organization, we have a CTO. The CTO probably leans more on the engineering side, probably less on the CIO side. I'll get there.
Great. Thanks, David. My name is Teresa Kim, and I'm the CFO of Duck Creek Technologies. The simple way to think about Duck Creek is your enterprise ERP for your carriers of insurance, basically for the P&C industry. So your tier 1, tier 2, carriers would be our customers, and we take care of everything around a end-to-end business operations, from helping our carriers intake policy, formulate pricing, do all the transactions when you think about inbound and outbound around claims and payments and billing. So it's a great industry where there is a lot of regulation, and there's a lot of our customer base that are still in that on-prem and cloud journey that we need to help navigate with their transformation offices to help deploy our services and our products. In terms of our CTO, we have a CPTO, and so that's a Chief Product Technology Officer. And so in that regard, I feel very fortunate. My CPTO oversees engineering, products, and also SaaS operations, so everything that relates to cost of revenues. And so I think the conversation is great, and we could really align on a lot of the KPIs to manage the business, because I am really working through one person who oversees that breadth of work. Simone?
Thank you, Teresa. My name is Simone Nardi. I'm the CFO for Globalization Partners, or GP, shortened version. What we are is a technology-based company that helps companies across the globe to expand their global footprint from an employment standpoint. So we help each one of our customers to hire people in different locations, different countries, very complicated, time-consuming processes, leveraging our own infrastructure in a matter of days or weeks, depending on the need of the customer. So I have international background, clearly. I appreciate the complexity that the company resolves with a technology-based solution. Saying technology because linked back to the question Andrea was asking, what is the CTO in our company? The CTO for us is the Chief Product and Strategy Officer. He has technology as part of his remittance and focus, so his engineering background, coming from a lot of similar SaaS, from the past. And similarly to what Teresa was mentioning, in my case, the name of the CPSO is Nat. He joined, curiously enough, the same month I did, 2.5, almost 3 years ago. So we kind of came through this journey together, in the evolution of the company and the market. So that created a specific, interaction that's very helpful and interesting. But in general, going back to the question, I mean, ultimately, it's the solution working as CTO equivalent. The kind of focuses on technology. Technology for us is very close to product. The automation benefits of technology in terms of scalability, to the product are critical, and the strategy to drive product technology development are all, finally to the same role. So very interesting interaction there. Clemente?
Thank you. No, thank you very much. My name is Clemente Cohen. I'm CFO at PG Forster Priscani. It's a healthcare software company, and the company delivers us, probably 10 years ago, the company was mainly focused on patient experience. So you used to go to a hospital, you visited a doctor, you used to get the service in paper form, you replied. Today, everything is, or most of the business is technology-based, and the company expanded also in other solutions like workforce experience in the healthcare side, but also commercial, and also safety and other areas around for the payers and providers, for hospitals and insurance companies. And how the company is organized from a product perspective is similar to Teresa's organization. My business partner is the CTO, CPO. He owns technology and product. So he's responsible for the development of the products, but also, together we're working from a product management perspective, how you monetize the products, and we are supporting him in effectively managing, leading his product life cycle in the company.
Great, thanks very much. So a lot of similarities in these organizations, but a few nuances in them as well. And we'll talk about these, throughout the discussion today. So Clemente, why don't we stay with you and talk specifically about your role in building the partnership and what it looks like on an ongoing basis?
Now I'm surprised with the question. I thought you will start on your left, and now
Gotta
you
mix it up. Gotta mix it up.
So I have to swallow first. So my role, I think, from a business partnership perspective in finance, you have two key business partners. So I have two key business partners. And then it's the sales leader who owns the go-to-market that we're not discussing today. And then we have the CTO who owns the product and the development side of the house. And because we are a software company, effectively the core of the business is really the product that you develop, is the product that you have today, and the products that you're developing for the future. So based on data that you have, experience that you have, you're trying to support the CTO of the company effectively to manage the process in understanding where the products are from a life cycle perspective, where you are earning money, where's profitability, how you can optimize or maximize the monetization of your products, and also tracking development and setting the strategy for the company from a product perspective, then really drives to pricing, and then also drives also to the go-to-market, because you have always to think about when you develop a new product, how you will sell it in the future. So that's why it's so exciting working, and I like it so much working in software companies, because when you talk to the CTO, you're really in the core of the business for today, but as importantly, also you're building the company for the future.
Great. Any other panelists want to add on to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. On that one. One of the challenges of working with a CTO or probably many of our organizations is there's a whole bunch of asks. And every day, everyone, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's product, whether it's engineering, everyone says, here's all the things we got to get done. And so it's challenging to sit with a CTO and have a conversation about all the things everyone wants to do because it all sounds smart. And so what do you do? The real way to do it, and it's been coming up in some of the other sessions we heard about FP&A, it's really about how do we take a step back with the organization, establish the framework first, and then figure out what the box we have to work with. And so what I find more productive rather than sitting with a CTO, and we have a chief product officer and having all those conversations of, for a CFO to sit there and say yes or no to things, that's not the right way to have a conversation. And so the first way to have a conversation, this is something that we're doing as a company, is you start with your strategic framework. And you need to establish where you're trying to head as a company, what's your North Star, what are your goals as a company, and collectively as a team, before you talk to the CTO, you gotta agree as a company, like where you're all focused. Once you establish that, then you start to get to what are we, each of us, doing to support that? What's the CFO doing? What's the CMO doing? What's the CTO doing? So then you start to have this framework, and the CFO is coming into play and saying, here's the guardrails, here's what we actually can afford to spend. And so you start to establish that guardrails of like, here's the company priorities, what do you focus on? And then so when you're having those conversations with the CTO, and roles can vary, the conversations are a lot more business-oriented, because now you can discuss what is it you're doing that's actually to support the company goals. And so I find that effective. But first start with the long-term strategy, where you want to head, get alignment before you start to get into the specifics.
Yeah, I mean, just adding to the same point, and we may actually elaborate on this question, carry through other questions as well. The framework, I think, is the core important point. Long-term framework, the strategy, where do we want to go to, and short-term, how do we translate that in concrete decision-making processes for the current quarter, the current year, and we're all in budgeting, process right now. If you have a calendar year to kind of close the fiscal, process for some of us. Other ones clearly are different, timelines. But if you're in the budgeting process, understanding exactly that longer and short-term framework, decide together what are the key goal and objective, translate that into OKR, going down department by department, what matters. And to David's point, look, at the end of the day, the interesting thing is that everyone will go to the CFO to ask for money. Everyone will go to the product or technology officer to ask for features or something to sell or to operate in a more efficient way. So actually, going back to our relationship with the CTO or the equivalent, title in different companies, there is a common need to be aligned, to be able to really filter through all these requests, in a smart way, understanding what is doable when. And that really connect, the discussion between a CFO and a CTO to be consistently on the same page, pushing and challenging each other, not just supporting each other, to understand what can we do and how do we match all these requests together in a smart way. Because if we are aligned, everyone else within the C-suite is going to have, a faster way to operate.
And just adding on to that, Simone, I think a large part of successful alignment and collaboration is the overall culture that you're building in your organization, right? It's not just you and your CTO. How have you maybe helped map the culture in your organization?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think for me, finance is an integral part of the business side. I think we're all CFOs that are very operational and strategic, and that's the way the role changed over the last few decades. And I think that's the way the role is fun and interesting, frankly, for many of us. So the culture of collaboration and coordination between different components of the organization, and the CFO not being the yes sayer or no sayer in terms of, this can be done, it cannot be done, but basically really be part of a structure that kind of help the CFO and the finance team, frankly, to be operators as well from a mindset standpoint, help to kind of get there. So I structure my team in a very connected manner. So we have, I call a mini CFO, it's probably not the right terminology, but each one of my peers in the C-suite has a finance person supporting them. I'm responsible for HR as well. They have an HR support as well. That is part of their teams. They help to understand, the operating priorities, translate them into numbers, and help the conversation when they bubble up to the C-level in a more cohesive way. Specifically, the culture and collaboration between, technology, product, and finance, well, it gets to the next level, right? Ultimately, it's important to be credible in this discussion. It's important to provide a perspective, to really help the counterpart, technology, product, frankly, same conversation with sales and other functions. Say, look, this is the framework. Going back to the same point, I love that word. You're going to hear it, over and over. To say that's what we can do, that's what we are able to do, that's what we want to prioritize. Within that framework, within that structure, we can tackle a lot of discussion, not to say no or yes, but sometimes to say yes now in terms of evolving in investing or not, or we can't do it now because of the objective situation that I can explain, and people are aware, you prepare that over month and month, but ultimately it can be readdressed in a quarter or two as the business evolves, as the market changes. The door is never closed or open forever unless the request clearly doesn't make sense. But I think we're lucky enough to have people around us that are very competent.
Teresa, in your organization, you mentioned your counterpart is the CPTO. What are some of the drivers behind the discussions that you're having with the CPTO?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think, similar to what David was talking about, understanding your company's North Star, your KPIs that get set, what kind of establishes what looks good, whether that's your LRP, your long-range plan, and those KPIs going out 3 to 4 years, or something even more immediate within the year, what those MBOs are. So all of that has to fit in and tie in, and it needs to be in a way that's measurable and understandable and tracked as the quarters go by. And that's just one framework, so you're never off kilter there. And then it's really, I don't like to just be known as the CFO, no. I want to be able to say first yes. And so that's really just getting into their business, very similar to the culture setting that Simone has mentioned. One of the things that I think is really important is not just your relationship with the CPTO, just the C-suite, because obviously they have multiple places to be, but really that layer down. And so in our organization, that's called the SLT, the Senior Leadership Team, and it's generally +1, +2, and where they have their own lines, whether that's the SaaS operations, whether it's the R&D person, and really developing the relationships there. And so one of the things that when coming onto Duck Creek, I wanted to do was raise the financial acumen of that team, which is the SLT team, where we have a monthly ELT, SLT team meeting, and we literally go through the financials, the monthly, the quarterly outlooks, get that against your budget, how are you doing, and even the long-range plan. These are the folks that are out in the field, day-to-day, making those decisions. I don't need to wait for the CPTO in my next sync with her. It's that second, third line that can actually just reach out to me. I have this issue, or I have an idea. Would that work? And that's the kind of raising that financial acumen that also offsets some of the work that we have to do as a finance team, because everyone's already aligned with the numbers that you need to reach, the goals. They know what decisions trigger COGS or OPEX. The smarter they get on some of those basics, the easier it is with yourself and your team. So I really like to drive that relational conversation with not just your peers, but a layer down or two, so that they can all be raised up and have the right conversations when they come to the table with my peer at the CPTO level. And so that just kind of shortcuts everything.
Yeah, I like that, raising the financial acumen. Have you also, at your organization, done the inverse of that, raising the technical acumen of the finance people? We have. So in my town halls, I make it a point that I invite others to come in, and one of the things, I think that's a cultural thing. It depends on where you came from and kind of where my background and where I was raised. And my CFO told me in my prior role is you should be spending less time with me and on the finance floor. And this is back pre-COVID, when you actually went into the office, and all of a sudden when my job changed as a divisional CFO, I didn't sit on the finance staff. I was sitting with my business partners, and that really is a change in mentality. And so that's one of the things, and I think Simone was talking about it too, that you should be spending less time with me and more time with your partners, and in a way, advocate for your partners. You already know what the financial metrics are. Advocate why we should invest in that. And so I think that's an important flip, and the more we know, I think some others had mentioned, the more we know about the market. I think in one of the last sessions around understanding the customers, I literally elbow my way in to get onto customer calls, and I'm like, I promise, I won't talk. I won't even say anything. I'll put myself on no video, because I want to know the struggles. I want to understand the things firsthand so I could be more helpful. So I think it's important. Finance forgets, and we get into a grind, and we have a lot to do. But I think it's worthwhile that our teams, our extended teams, that we push them out in the business so they could bring back more.
To add what Teresa said, what is just interesting and challenging, but intellectually really, really interesting working with CTO, CPO is these are visionaries. usually. You know, they think about the products and the technology, how it's evolving in the next years, and whatever they want to do, they want to realize what is their vision. And they are not typically the finance-savvy people. They don't like numbers, and if you provide numbers to them, they will struggle. They don't have the focus because they think about technology, engineering, and their vision and how to get there. So it's really the interesting part, and the best business partners for those people are people that understand how to speak their language, so that, you know, you understand what they're telling you from a technology perspective, and then you can translate it into financials, operational metrics that are easy to understand for them and to follow and to agree with. And that is a very, you know, challenging and in alignment. In other areas, it's more about OpEx management or your cash flow or your receivables. But this is an area also that is less tangible also, because you're building a model, a financial model for the future, how you will monetize something that you don't see today. And to have this type of conversations with engineering teams or the engineering leader, and simplify the way how you communicate, simplify the way how you present information to them, makes really the difference between a FP&A person, an accountant, a real business partner for the CTO and CPO of a company.
Great. I think I've heard a few of you say you don't want to be the CFO no, right? You want to be collaborative, you want a partner.
That's what Teresa said.
Okay. Well then.
Sometimes it's nice to say no.
I have a no button somewhere.
I guess maybe starting with David, have you ever had to be the CFO no and stop or slow down a very strategic long-term product investment? And if so, without giving too many details, you know, why and how did you do that?
I'll give you answer the question in two ways. I think I'm going to talk about challenges that probably many of us at this table, many of us in the room face. And the challenge is that once you build things, your architecture is growing, and you actually have to keep maintaining that architecture. Absolutely. So there's a challenge. There's a challenge of you know, how do you focus? How do you actually stop doing things? I can give you experiences. I can also tell you that I'm not always successful. But the thing that you want to encourage in your organization, and I've done this, tried to do it with a prior company, I'm trying to do it right now, is to think about, look at what you're building and what's actually most important, and figure out a way that, what is the way you're actually going to help us to understand what is actually most valuable and what's least valuable. And so there's things you can look at, like, what do you look at usage of certain products and features? If we're not getting usage, that's probably an indicator that your team shouldn't be spending time on doing those things. So what you're not doing is as important to being successful as what you're doing. The second answer to the question is what we did something at our prior company. We had this roadmap to do image recognition, and so among all the different things was on the roadmap. And what we saw with our prior company is that there were other companies that were starting up to do this feature and functionality, and so we're going to be less competitive. And so CEO's initiative with my partnership were like, you know what? It's pretty clear that this should be the number one focus. And so he led, followed by my leadership, told the engineering organization, I don't care what you're doing, here's the number one thing of focus. So that's also telling them everything that they're doing, that can be very disruptive to the team. So, and demotivating to the team, right? They have their plans, they have their scrum, they're working on a whole bunch of different stuff. And so the lesson there is, you know, there was a lot of pushback, a lot of challenge, a lot of pain, a lot of ahas, why we're doing things. The lesson learned is, one is we got the product out. The deadline was February, came out in March or April. Either way, it's a win. The lesson learned there was related to stop is if you want to be successful, you have to help people understand the why, right? And I always say this to my team: if we're doing something in the best interest of the company, then everything's okay, right? You're questioning. I have my team. The question on contracts, the question on financial, the question on business, business decisions. If you're acting in the best interest of the company, you're going to get everyone's respect. So at first, we came away, first everyone's like, why are we doing it? We're spending all this work. They lose confidence in the leadership. But once you talk to people, you help them understand why it's the highest priority. You actually gain a lot of credibility and a lot of belief. And so that's also a lesson learned, is help people understand the why you're making decisions and how it actually is the right decision on behalf of the business.
Any others on the panel want to elaborate on a story?
I do. I need to clear up my name here. So I do have a CFO no in me. No, I'm just teasing. But I think one of the areas when I joined early on was I asked our CEO, how great are we with M&As? It was just an area that was easy to just question. Because I know when most of us here have platforms, so there's always this build versus buy question that we need to tackle on. So I know that we had some buys, so let's see how great we are with that. And so as we did a look back on a particular one, back to initial investment case, and we all know investment cases are very flowery and they're very rosy and whatnot. But we saw some results that did not look great. And so that's where with our CPTO, I had to have a conversation. What is going on? Here are the results, and I'm not here to point it at you. You probably actually didn't even know, right? It just gets embedded in, and you get consolidated results. But for me, this is something that I wanted to do, and of course, I also let my peers know that I was doing this, so it didn't look like I was trying to be investigative. So I'm like, look, let's do it, just so we could all learn, and mostly so I could learn the business over something that's very concrete. And as we did that, a lot of conversations came up, which is some of our pre-conversations around products versus sales. Well, we have this, but it's the sales that didn't push out, and then the sales said, well, it's didn't meet the geo requirements, and now we're having all these conversations, which might seem like, why did you open the can of worms? But it was good. It helped open up some of the breakdown. So the CFO note here was like, okay, let's all not talk about the past and, what is it, a sales item, is it a product item or issue, but knowing where we are with these financials on this particular product, I would like to give ourselves a shot clock for 12 months to figure out what are we going to do. And I laid out pretty clear parameters, and if we don't meet these things, if we don't have a plan, I'm not saying we have to execute it, a good plan that we could believe, that the board could believe, then let's make some difficult decisions. And all of a sudden you see a rally around that, both the sales side and the product side, and trying to work towards each other. So I think that's the type of partnership, like I don't want to tell the CPTO what to do, but it's the uncovering, using the numbers to say, here's where we're at, so ... so what? Like, what should we do? So that's a little bit of a no-like behavior, which is kind of like I'm, not happy with where we're at. So that's just another example of how to partner.
If I can add on that one, that's a great example on how a CFO can actually help multiple parties at the C-suite table to kind of come to an understanding of what is best for the company to do, right? And often you have friction. I mean, sales and product, sales and marketing, there's always something that someone else doesn't do, for which the other party is not able to do exactly what they were dreaming or trying or targeting to do. Similar situation, ultimately leveraging data, setting up, clear expectations, showing objectively, because we're kind of super partners as CFOs, right? You don't have a section, you care about total company success, like everyone else, but you don't have your garden, because you really go from the top line to the last penny that stay in the company, all the way down to net income and cash flow. And for an example I can put on the table is like many of us, we went through a process, we're going through processes to help to automate the customer journey, to some extent. It cannot, in our opinion, to be entirely automated, but there are opportunities to make the business more scalable through some of these investments that require the marketing team, the sales team, all goes through the funnel, as well as the technology or product officer and teams to kind of be engaged and drive, this evolution. So what we did about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, we went down a path of defining some automation steps in a portion of the funnel that we were caring about from a marketing standpoint. And as we implemented that solution with more automation, we saw, data on hands, some deterioration on the remaining part of the funnel in different product lines. So raising the numbers, raising the data, again, in the marketing, the CMO in that case, and the product strategy officer, CTO equivalent, as myself, and the teams to kind of assess and discuss, help collaboratively understand, well, do you want to pause it? It's kind of a no, soft no, pause. But say, look, we're not going to do it now. Let's understand better through data what's happening now. Is just a timing coincidence? Is what we're doing in this specific project is impacting the broader play? Because ultimately, we want to see the volume coming through. Automating that is great, but if the volume stops coming through, what's the bigger problem? Revenue don't count. The backlog, goes down. So working in that, coordination, again, data on hands, and again, not, closing drastically or building a dam or closing a gate to say, ain't gonna happen anymore. Just say, hold on, let's pause, understand what's going on, continue to assess the data, and then, tweak the approach to see where we can succeed and where we create bigger problems, help us to go through the process. Now, the project is still frozen, but we're still studying that.
I think the key is about saying yes or saying no. I mean, saying yes and no is usually more the tactical side of the house, the day-to-day. But when you think about big investments and the direction, strategic direction of the company, I see the role of finance or the CFO or the business partner is to guide and to orchestrate the decision-making in the company. You want to make sure that the right people are in the room when you make the decision, and you want to make sure that whatever data is used to make the decision is correct. And I might not agree with the decision, but I think in my role, if I feel that I had my sales leader, the CEO, the CTO, and who else you need in the room, the board, and they had the information, the instruments to make the right decision, I feel that I'm making my job. So nobody should come after 6 months and say, oh, if I would have known, I was not invited to the decision making. This is I think is the most important, one of the most important jobs that you have is in finance. Or a larger company might have like a strategy organization that will manage this for you. But in middle-sized companies, usually it's either strategy or finance or both together. But that's really the key is, to formalize and make sure that decisions are made in a very professional, rational way with the right data.
Maybe pivoting just a little bit, thinking about the evolving partnership as well as product innovation, technology innovation, things like AI. Maybe Simone, tell us at your company how that has helped or hindered, right, the partnership with the technology organization.
It's a great question, and everyone is thinking AI, right? So we got to cover that. Look, I think it's very interesting, and in my company, the experience we're going through is particularly interesting in my view as an example. So ultimately, look, there is two ways you can, track the success of some initiatives, and you have areas that are well established, so you can look at incremental, improvement, marginal improvement on a very structured framework. Other places like AI, they're relatively new, they can provide a less measurable opportunity in terms of success and drive, right? What we're doing on our side is we're leveraging AI and Gen AI specifically on two purposes. One is to increase our scalability, more efficiencies, and then the other one that actually, was born, frankly, out of these initial activities, not by chance, but, but natural evolution through the discussion, collaboratively with the CTO as well. Is developing another product line that actually can be going above and beyond what we do as a company. So just to recap, we help companies to kind of employ people globally. So for us, we have infrastructure across covering more than 180 countries to hire anyone we want for our clients whenever they want, however they want, very quickly and very efficiently. We have a technology platform behind that clearly can be improved, but we also have a good amount of people that need to understand the regulation and the details of what needs to be done and how it has to be done in Italy versus France versus Brazil, all very different countries that never going to change. They're never going to be the same. You're never going to get all this employment law and regulation cohesively redefined. They're always going to be different. So there is an element of in between that is the service that we provide is really important. Well, you can imagine Gen AI in general can help leveraging a knowledge base that is properly defined to automate a lot of the processes. And that's the way we discussed and started, the whole process for, our investment. And that was specifically focused on, efficiency metrics in terms of, we're going to scale and expand the business at this level, increase the number of employees, for our customer by, 20, 30, 40, whatever it is % a year. Well, we're not going to grow the team supporting that the same way, because the abilities of developing through an AI solution, this facilitative understanding should help us to be more effective and therefore scalable and efficient. Now, that process was measurable. We worked through it. It generated another point to say, hold on, what we're doing for our areas called employment on record can actually be done on everything else out there that is related to employment law. We have the knowledge. We're employing thousands and thousands of people globally. So let's put the same knowledge base, in another version of this advisor structure that we call GIA, to support customers that have nothing to do with our initial offering, the traditional one, but actually get to leverage and know through this AI advisory rather than consulting or expensive solutions what to do and how to do it in different countries. Well, that's very powerful in our view. It's very difficult to measure success today, though, and that's why going back to your question, say, look, at the end of the day, you need to have some target definitions, and knowing that when you are structured and the product and the business is well defined, is incremental, it's relatively easy to identify and agree on that. In other cases, you launch a new product line that is not exactly connected, in terms of the customer base to your existing one. Well, you need to kind of be flexible and define, continuous and continuously readjust, frankly, some of these performance metrics and targets that you have. And by the way, you need to kind of build them, through the process, and it cannot be done by finance. It cannot be done by the chief products technology or strategy officer, nor by the CEO. It has to be a collegial effort on the point that, look, we know we're not perfect, human beings. The acceleration of this understanding through the process is critical. We know that we're going to have some, clear win in terms of the metrics that we hit, but sometimes the expectation is not properly positioned, so we need to pivot quickly and realign and understand what really matters. What are we learning from what we're doing? How do you want to test it? How do we bring together? That comes back to, one of the first questions is the collaboration within that team that is critical to trust each other and ensure that we kind of take an assessment and decision through this process in the best possible way.
Great. Others, thoughts on that?
I'll add it. So we keep track of, we're a SaaS company, we're data and analytics. So AI, data, it's a no-brainer. We should be thinking about things. And AI is really valuable for a data company. There's two things. One is we deliver data in a SaaS platform. And so we have so much data that AI can help us to have a more, as we all say, a frictionless experience. Like, it's hard to get at everything, and so AI can help us to make the product experience better, just like we're all using ChatGPT. And hopefully that should unlock some growth with some of our prospects and customers. And the second way is a data company. Naturally, you're like, how can we use AI to actually help us to capture data more efficiently? So we're a perfect use case for it. So knowing that and us having that thesis, strategically, we're going through planning next year. And so naturally, what is coming about as we go through the planning cycle is, given if that's our goals, let's make our engineering team 25% bigger. So that's sort of the reality. And so, as sort of Simone said, one of the challenges with AI is we have these hypotheses, but it's all about testing and learning. And so how do we actually figure out what works for the organizations? The reality is we don't have the economics to grow our engineering team by 25%. And so one of the things that we're trying to balance, or at least I'm trying to balance, is the concept of testing and learning and accountability, right? The testing is learning is like, yes, there's things we can do. We're all trying to figure this out collectively, like what AI means actually for companies, and this is going to be a journey for us. And so to allow that discovery is one challenge, is one thing I want to sort of allow. But at the second time is that accountability piece of what are you actually doing to drive the impact of business. And so right now, part of the exercise, and Teresa, this gets to what you were talking about beforehand, is if those are our two hypotheses, then what I'm saying is I need you to build that into next year's plan. And that's a way to encourage the accountability and figure out what we really need for resources. Because if we think it's going to be unlocked to our prospects and grow our customer base, then I want to see that in the forecast, and I want sales to sign up for that. And you can see that sales is resistant to signing up for all of it, because they're like, I don't know what you're going to actually deliver. And so you start to, that's the connective tissue that we bring to the organization, and that's what I'm also trying to bring. And the same thing from an efficiency perspective. We need to capture a lot of first-party data that no one has. And AI, if we use it, can help us to be more efficient, have better quality controls, and so it can help us there. But it's the same exact discussion. If we're going to be more efficient, then where am I going to actually see that outcome in the business? And the data, people who are all the money we're spending on data capturing, I'm looking to see something there. And so the data capture team is saying, well, I'm not necessarily willing to put something in here. And so that's the connective tissue that we've been talking about that I think we've heard a lot of these meetings that we as a CFO can bring. And it's a way we can bring the business conversation to this and try to get to the right place. And so those are discussions we're having right now.
Great, excellent, thank you.
And AI is a good example for finance how to show value, because if you think about it's transformational. Transformational also in the way how you run R&D. You know, the entire coding, the build of coding and a new product, updating, improving your coding structure is around AI. And that way you can help, the CTO, CPO to model this out, how you can become more efficient. So it's a very good example where you can show a lot of value in the model.
I have a comment too to follow up. So for us, we have a transformation office, and one of the areas, a supported project is how are we going to leverage AI? And similar to David, in our annual plan, we actually have a model to say from top all the way down to bottom, where are the opportunities we could leverage AI? And so I think, combining, obviously it's very collaborative. You need an AI champion in each of these areas, whether that's product. We even have someone on the legal team. We have someone on the G&A. So, somebody that says, okay, I will take the baton, this AI baton, and I will leverage and look. And then you've got to get your CISO, your security officer, somehow involved here too, to make sure that we are responsible. We have rules of the road. So there's a lot to do this in a safe way, in a managed way. But I think what's really important is what David said is you do need to have a framework on how you're going to measure what are the outcomes for AI for you, whether that's product. We have it also with our customer success. We have it with our teams that submit and receive tickets. And so we're trying to just deploy it everywhere, but in a managed way. But you do need champions, you need a governance structure and a framework, which will help you and keep yourselves accountable to keep tracking back. And the CPTO is definitely a driver because, like everyone said, that's where the vision starts. But you do need champions and a governance team, and make sure your security team is also involved. So a lot of people need to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, well, thank you all. Let's open it up to some questions in the audience here. We have several.
Thanks for the discussion so far. So I'm an 8-time enterprise tech co-founder. And so there's a lot of, the rate of speed of generative AI and the improvements, the fact that the cost could decline by 100x a year, right? I would imagine you've never seen this rate of improvement of product before, right? And there's a lot of talk about existential threat to SaaS vendors because of this agentic, very verticalized, very specific workflow. And you talked about, the shot clock, 12-month shot clock. You talked about, and again, lots of North Star discussions, but these take time. So are you feeling sort of a level of urgency and pressure to drive to decisions that you have not yet experienced in your roles as CFOs? Has something fundamentally shifted in the way that you see the future, given what could be a complete reformation of the SaaS world?
I'm happy to give some context. In a data company, I think one of the things I think all of us ask, AI is going to be transformative. I think what's it going to do globally? What's it going to do all work, the entire workforce? So I'm going to avoid all that. How do I think about our company? So we're a data company. What we're talking about, and sort of when we talk about strategic planning, is what's our moat. And so it's hard. Like I spent a lot, our CTO, I spent a lot of time talking about AI. And I have a lot of theoretical conversations. And the reality is we only have so many people, we can only do so much. And so I go, what is the boulders we should be focusing on? The boulder we think about focusing on is what's our, in our company, what's our moat given AI is coming here? And let's make sure that we're actually focusing on that. And then while we're, and so that's how strategically, because I think to hypothesize all the different derivations about AI, no one really knows. And so I think the reality is that keep getting to, I'm enjoying the conversations, but let's be practical and let's think about what are the biggest boulders. Because the reality is, I forget the expression is, like, you only need to be faster than your slowest competitor. So that's kind of how I think about it, is we can get all revved up, but at the end of the day, I just need to be a little better than the next person. The next slowest competitor, right. Right. But.
So can I just do a follow-up? Sure. You have chief product officers that grew up in a different era. And now generative AI is on the docket. Are you finding that they are able to come up to speed quickly enough to integrate this new world that we're entering, or are you having to introduce additional players with vision, in Teresa's phrase, to inform the strategy?
I have an answer to that. I think you're exactly right. We actually, so it is a priority on our transformation office to invest in this very specifically, to build it into our annual plan, which also includes specialists. I think we ourselves, I can only speak for our organization, there are brilliant people in our organization, but that might not be his or her expertise. And so we are saying, let's bring them in. Now, I think, the way we talk about it with our board is we don't want to be left behind. Now, how much it gives us growth on the top line or operating, expenses, it's unknown and unclear, but what we don't want to do is not be practitioners of it and learning from it. We don't want to be behind. And so we made a dedicated decision, a one that's defined and a one that we are willing to take some investment. I don't think it's risk, but investments to deploy. So the answer is yes, we did bring in external folks and did not assume that the smartest engineer is going to be able to play that role effectively.
Totally agree. Go first.
And the question is also because things are changing so fast that I'm flexible. And while we discuss about governance, framework, everything, I mean, the day-to-day, you cannot just run your framework. And, we have like an innovation fund or some flexibility that, you're a little bit loose how you release the money because you have to learn. You don't know the outcome, but you have to investigate. And then from the threat in the market is this one of the key strategic questions today. Are you a pure technology company and then you have really the threat because you're upcoming companies that can compete with you because it's all around technology? Or like in our case, because we are so focused in the healthcare and certain areas of the healthcare, you need to decide whether you lead with technology or lead with thought leadership, or how you combine this together. And then again, as a finance CFO, you need to allocate the funds accordingly. But a pure technology focus and leadership, is dangerous because it's always the next generation of technologies coming up that you don't know today, but someone is developing already. This is happening.
On that point, I guess, ultimately, what is important, I think, through the process is to think about how this, in this case, Gen AI, but any technology that kind of disrupt the environment can impact your company on 3 different levels. One is changing my business purpose. Can I do the same? Can I still provide the same level of benefit to my customers or prospect? 2, can I be more efficient in what I'm doing when I do that, my core business? And then 3, can it gives me, another way of building or expanding my business, a new product line, a new way of expansion. That was hinting on before, we started this whole process on a knowledge base that we wanted to improve to help our own team to be more effective. Then we start to kind of, move from there into, hold on, AI can automate the process more. Gen AI came up, well, put it on there. The important point David was mentioning, data is important, is critical for Gen AI. And proprietary data is more critical than any other data you find out there. Otherwise, you just use ChatGPT. The fact that you need to have, your own knowledge base properly defined, add people on top and solution that kind of leverage that on to make it more effective, to drive an answer to the 3 points I mentioned before, again, your business, your efficiencies, or new business lines, is critical. And Gen AI is very specialized. Our CTO is the same, and he is very flexible mentally to kind of, understand all these different shifting points. And the good news is that he had a good connection into a structure or a team that actually was very connected to Gen AI play. So we started to hire a small team with a slash fund, investment fund, to build on top of that. We saw that coming up faster and better. We expanded that one. And the interesting thing on that one is to keep it a bit separate. It's very well integrated, but it's also a bit separate because you don't want to, it's going to be a very different way to nurture and measure the success or not. If you put too many metrics on top of them, you start to kind of suffocate them. As an entrepreneur, you need to kind of let it run. And it's very interesting from a CFO standpoint because, yeah, but okay, I put there at $1 to whatever it is $1 million. When do I see it? What do I see? Well, sometimes, our flexibility is to kind of understand what the project can drive and when is the right time to be specific and driven and focus on more tangible performance metrics. And that's critical.
Great conversation. Is it on? Hi. My name is Jerry Gupta. I'm one of the founding team members of InsurTech. We insure AI risk and model performance. The underlying theme of this conversation seems to be how do you meaningfully engage with the CTO and track performance? Having been both on the tech side and the business side, I can say with great degree of confidence that some of the metrics that the tech teams use are at best fuzzy, especially with the OKRs and things of that nature. So how do you, as CFOs who may not know as much about the technology, verify that the performance metrics you're getting actually, A, they are the right performance metrics, B, that the run rate benefit or any value that is represented as being created is actually being created?
It's a tough one.
I can start. When I have a differentiation between, investments in development on new products or solutions. So how do you track performance? What is your budget that you set for the development? And then, you need to verify also the return that you're thinking you will get, whether as you go, whether this is realistic or not. From a pure finance and operations perspective, it's a balance of, not micromanaging the development team. That's not your job, but to look into the clear milestone, higher level milestones of development that you track spending with time. And then while you're tracking the development and the time, also evaluating always, the top line expectations. So if you think that you get what you have, then for existing product portfolio, it's all around, what is the market opportunity that you have. Your existing, we are software company, subscription business or SaaS business. The stickiness of your products and, how to further development, the stickiness, how you can maximize the price points is pricing and this type of, and then cost of maintenance and support for the existing products. That's the ways how we are doing. But I have a clear distinction about the existing product portfolio that you have versus, new investments and new ideas in the company, how to track it.
Just to add, I think that, I'm a strong believer that, data-driven analysis can get you to the right place. You need to be at the right time in terms of evolution of the product, the investment, or the solution you're trying to implement. That's the flexibility that we touched base on, a few times. The complexity to me becomes more, even in those more established organizations or businesses, not to connect to the right metrics, but understand what influenced that metric, performance or lack of. Because it's never just one factor that kind of drive from one metric to the next one, to the next one. There is a lot of, contingent or connected parties. And that's where it comes, very, complicated. It becomes more of an art, but ultimately structuring that in a way that kind of have different metrics flowing into the same. It's basically the pyramid of having, the ultimate goal, for example, with metrics attached. And seeing these connecting points where you have multiple influences coming in and kind of impacting or not the success of the evolution, and understand where it's coming from, which one is over and which one is under delivering is critical. their point, by the way, often when you set up a metric, you don't put a target as the perfect target. You put a target that helps you to kind of get to an evolution in the direction you want to get to. That then, as a CFOs, we can roll up into a budget, into a forecast, into a discussion, into a measurement process that kind of help us to invest more in ROI analysis or whatever it is. So there is a lot of sophistication, a lot of specificity that needs to be factored on that one. But yeah, I mean, it's a network of multiple influences or connecting points through this process as well. So totally not easy.
Yeah, I could do one follow-up, a little bit more tactical, which I'm sure all of my peers here look at gross margins by, consolidated and product, which clearly lives in the space of a product or, CTO executive. And one of those areas is really understanding and double-clicking, how much of the fluctuations in gross margin is a top-line problem versus, how your cost of revenues. And when you double-click into your cost of revenues, and all of us here are SaaS enterprise companies, there's the people aspect, there's the public cloud, if that's what you're using. I'm assuming most of us do, if not all. And then when you double-click into the public cloud, you're going to see what is customer-specific usage versus what is shared platform usage. And then you continue, and then you realize that you can go off of a single gross margin, either consolidated or at the product level. You could slice it by geos, because some of those geos you intend to invest more in because they're harder or more difficult to serve. Size of customer, complexity of customers. And so now there's a lot of sophistication. So you could go off just a gross margin number. But I think what is really relevant is when you start doing those double, triple clicks and you understand, and they're like, wow, I have so many people operating my SaaS. Why? And then you have those conversations and you peel the onion and you realize, and sometimes they themselves get surprised. So I think it's really important, kind of going back to my earlier comment and raising the financial acumen and making sure your financial structure, you could actually not only see the blended, but the double clicks, I think is really helpful. And you surprise yourself and your leadership team.
Great. Well, thank you to all of our panelists and to you, the audience, for the engaging conversation.